In 2009, the science fiction action film Surrogates was released. The movie stars Bruce Willis and Rosamund Pike and explores questions around the dangers of technology. Now, we see this theme explored a lot in the science fiction genre, most notably from the Terminator franchise. The movie Surrogates doesn't take the same route, though, as Terminator. It explores the dangers of technology from a different angle, and that's how technology can eliminate that human connection, the importance of the human connection. Overall, the movie is pretty solid all around, with good acting, a solid story, and a satisfying ending. Now, one of the stranger things in the film, I think, is seeing Bruce Willis in the role he's in. It might just be me, but it's tough to watch Willis outside the pure action genre. I get that he's made some other solid films, like The Sixth Sense and The Fifth Element, but to me, Willis plays the dominant alpha male actor well. That's really his forte. Now, in this movie, he plays a surrogate for much of the movie, and even though he does a pretty good job acting-wise, it still feels a bit strange since he's essentially a robot. In general, the movie does a good job presenting the surrogates and how they came to essentially dominate society. We see how this society functions, and of course how humans are essentially able to live these riskless lives by living through these surrogates. Now, the movie's storyline is simple enough to follow, as Tom Greer, the main character played by Bruce Willis, is assigned to a case where a surrogate is killed, and it kills the operator as well. Now, this is deemed impossible, and Tom has to investigate just how this happened. The movie eventually takes him to Dr. Lionel Cantor, and Dr. Cantor's son had borrowed his surrogate and was one of the two victims killed or murdered. Now, Dr. Cantor created the surrogate system, but he began criticizing it, and as such, his old company, VSI, put out a hit on them, and VSI is the evil corporation in this movie that builds and makes all these surrogates. Now, the weapon used on Dr. Carter's son, it's a weapon that removes the safeguards and kills the operators of the surrogate, and a vast conspiracy is exposed by Tom, and he's forced to uncover it, not using his surrogate. So we see him struggle to live just through normal society because he's so used to living through his surrogate. Now, in one of the final scenes, Tom, realizing the importance of human interaction, allows a virus to infect all the surrogates, ultimately disabling them. Tom comes home and he greets his wife, who's a little bit strange because they never interact, person to person. They only interact through their surrogates. And the two embrace. It's very significant because his wife was really against the idea of them meeting outside their surrogates, seeing their real selves. And in the final scene, we see people, they're forced to leave their homes, head down to the streets, put down the technology, and overall this movie, it did a great job just exploring the dangers of technology, which are still apparent, today. This is still an important question in society. Now, while the surrogates are surely helpful, we see how the humans really become over-reliant upon them in the film. This has certainly been a big topic, an important question that's been explored not only in movies since the 80s, really, probably earlier too, but also in society, probably, today more than ever with things like artificial intelligence. Now, one thing I didn't quite agree with in this movie is how they had essentially safe zones or areas where surrogates weren't allowed, and they were essentially just slums. And this doesn't make much sense, as I think we could expect society to be at least somewhat successful without surrogates. Maybe they wouldn't have all the bells and whistles, but I don't think that they would be living worse than a third world country. Now, as an analogy, just to kind of piggyback on that, I think if we had, if you think about society before internet, before TV, people still lived pretty good lives. things were able to be functioning, and it kind of reminds me how the slums are of Demolition Man, how everyone's living under the city, people who refuse to go along with the rules in Demolition Man. And there's really some classic scenes in that movie. Now, overall though, that central core theme of people being over reliant on technology, the dangers of not having human connection, that's what this movie's really about. It's still a good watch, it's still aged well, and I would definitely recommend it if you haven't checked it out. Thanks.